you like our intro music. Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of HOSTility. It is January 31st, 2023. I am joined today by the wonderful, the amazing, the incomparable Exmo Lex, one of my favorite people in the entire world, one of my friends, my confidants, my family, my stand-in mother, though you once volunteered to be my new mother. You are younger than I am.
That's true, but it's okay.
That was the funny thing of it all. And so my younger mother, I don't know how to, sort of like the types of families that kids in drama class have together. I don't know if you were familiar with that whole routine.
Yes.
It's all a wild and weird world over there. And we are tonight talking about leaving Mormonism. So if you would like to discuss that, if you would like to ask a question about Mormonism, what it was like to be Mormon, what it is like to now be an ex-Mormon, what it was like to talk to our families, if you want to know how our families found out, are there any topics you'd be extra excited to talk about, Exmo Lex? Would you be more excited to talk about sexism within purity culture, potatoes in Mormonism? That's a real thing. Is there a specific subject area that you would be extra excited to take questions about?
I'm up for just about anything. I feel like there's nothing about Mormonism that I couldn't talk about pretty much endlessly at this point. So
yeah,
whatever people want to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm willing to go for forever. Now, listen, everybody, here's the thing. One very special thing about tonight's show is that this is the last show that you're going to see on this channel with all this hair. Because tomorrow night's show is The Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty and Heathen Queen. And then on Thursday, I guess you'll see it at the beginning of Thursday's show. On Thursday, we're going to do something for the 3-year anniversary of this channel, The Line. We started The Line 3 years ago this coming Thursday. 3 years prior, Matt Dillahunty and I did our very first episode of what I think was the Sunday show. Did we do it on Sunday back then? I don't remember. But anyway, we're doing the anniversary episode this coming. It'll be the 3-year anniversary this Thursday. And because we hit the goal in January, we launched a Patreon. And I said, if we get 250 patrons for The Line before the month was over, that I would shave my head to bald. I would take the sides of my beard off and go down to just a goatee. And if I can find some temporary dye, I'll make it salt and pepper too. And I'm going to cosplay for a week of shows as Matt Dillahunty. I will cosplay as a much, much, much younger Matt Dillahunty, way younger. Let's be clear. Just kidding. I just do that to tease him. And we did it. We are currently at, let me actually go take a look. We are currently at, I want to say 280 patrons, which by the way, 250 was just where we needed to get started. We're trying to hire an audio engineer for the podcast and stuff. We're at 281. So we actually passed it by 31 patrons. So also, we're going to be doing events on there. We've already done one Zoom with Matt and I. We'll be doing Zoom events with other people and more things to come in the future. It starts at $5 a month, patreon.com/calltheline. That's enough of promoting us. That's enough of saying promote, because tonight isn't about us. Tonight is about Exmo Lex. Exmo Lex, do you want to tell people a little bit about you and where you can be found? And that'd be great.
Sure. So I'm an ex-Mormon. I left the church in 2018, and in 2019, I started making content about that. So I'm on YouTube, ExmoLex, TikTok, @ExmoLex. I make all sorts of long-form and short-form content about leaving the Mormon church. And, I like to discuss a lot of the emotional aspects of that. I feel like is something that I felt like was missing in the ex-Mormon community was, not just how wrong the Mormon church was, but like how difficult that transition is. And so that's a lot of what I like to talk about.
Hell yeah. I have loved your channel for a long time. I'm trying to remember when we met. How long has it been now? Did we meet before the pandemic or was it during?
It was before.
Was it? Wow. Time has become
Yeah, like actually, I'm
unmeasurable to
pretty
me.
sure it was right after I started making content and I reached out because my dad was being really mean about it. And so I
Yeah.
asked for your opinions. I think we had a phone call about it.
Yeah, I do remember the phone call. I just can't remember
It would have been
when.
like summer 2019.
Wow. Time
Yeah.
has become just not trackable to me anymore. It's like really, really difficult. So generally with these shows, what we do is we start the show off with basically a conversation asking about different stuff between me and the host, sort of trying to introduce everybody to the person we are hosting that night. That's what sort of the purpose of this show, HOSTility, is, to basically introduce people to people that I like and want to feature. There will be future episodes. Right now, we're completely booked up through February, and I think I'm hosting all of them. But there will be future episodes where somebody like Shannon or Forrest hosts somebody. It's not always going to be HOSTility with Jimmy Snow as the person hosting somebody else. But at the moment, you've got a lot of me to come. And so basically we're just gonna chat. I'm gonna ask Lex some questions and then we'll get to calls. That phone number is on the screen right now, 720-619-2288. There is also a web link in the description. So if you would like to call in from your computer, or if you're calling internationally but you have a smartphone and you want to use your data instead of worrying about international whatever, you can do so there. Again, the topic tonight mostly being Mormonism. Of course, if somebody wants to challenge us, we're both atheists. Somebody wants to challenge on theism and say you should believe in God, or you just left the wrong church. Of course you don't believe in God because you were a Mormon. Here's the right church that you should have considered. We've heard it before. I'm fine to engage in the conversation again. Bring it on. Now, Lex, last week we had Nuance Ho on. I don't know if you know her at
Yeah.
all. I'm sure you're familiar with her. I don't know if if you all have met.
Yeah, we've met.
She's amazing. So we were talking about her upbringing, and she has sort of a unique Mormon upbringing in that she sort of has a progressive family more. Like she still got out and obviously still sees all the things that were wrong and understands and appreciates all the experiences of people that had worse family situations. I think your upbringing is like the polar opposite. She came from a much more progressive Mormon side of Mormonism. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you would describe your Mormon family?
Yeah, I feel like my Mormon upbringing was very much average for like a Utah Mormon that was brought up in Utah County. My parents were both very, very conservative, more in line with like Prophet Ezra Taft Benson and his sort of views and feelings. So not progressive in any way, although if you talk to my mom about that these days, she's progressed to being more progressive. So she kind of like tries to act like, oh, back then I was like this too, which is really not the case. My family was like the type of Mormons that were also really involved in politics. Like we went to Glenn Beck events when I was a teenager. We were like, do the Tea Party thing, if you're familiar with that.
Oh yeah.
My mom was really into like conservative talk shows and things like that. And that's like what I remember a lot of my childhood to like teenage years being involved in, not just Mormonism, but like conservative politics mixed with Mormonism when it came to like Glenn Beck and people like him.
Yeah. We similar in my family. Like it was when Glenn Beck became a public figure. Even my dad, who at the time like would have been considered more of a moderate, more somewhere between not on the world stage, but somewhere where he's going to say he's a Republican, but still holds some views and sort of straddles a little bit, not in the good way. Like usually when you hear that, you're like, well, hopefully he's at least good with like gay marriage. And like, nope, Nope, not that.
Not
but
that
like,
one, no.
but you know, he does support welfare programs up to a point. Thinks that that's okay, and supports subsidies for this and this and whatever. And so we had the same thing. There was a lot of Glenn Beck hero worship. My dad really liked Bruce R. McConkie, which is like where a lot of it's sort of like Mormonism was at least progressing toward being a less unreasonable giant sack of just shitty people. And then Bruce R. McConkie shows up and is like, hey, let's set this shit back 100 years. What are y'all doing in here with this? It's pretty gross. It's pretty bad.
He sounded just like that too.
Hey, what are you Mormons doing? What the fuck? Except I didn't say fuck. That's against the rules. That's pretty much a perfect spot on impression of Bruce R. McConkie for anybody who's wondering. It was very much that type of, so this is going somewhere. Again, remember, if you want to call in, you have a question, you have a challenge or whatever, 720-619-2288. We will move to calls before too long. Get in your calls now so that we can screen them now so that by the time we're ready to start taking calls, we've already got them screened. So just go ahead and list off for me, if you can remember them. Like, who were the top 5 role models for your family, like the hero? Sorry if this is like an excessively like, now I have to remember all of this, but can you list off? It doesn't have to be 5, but just list off as many as you can remember of like role models your family held.
I mean, the top ones would have been like Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. I remember, like Gordon B. Hinckley, he was like kind of like my prophet, like the one that was my childhood prophet, and I would say he was probably one of them because he was the one that was like really into temple work and stuff, and that was a big deal at the time. And Ezra Taft Benson, like he was really like Bruce R. McConkie. He did a lot of like political stuff, and Spencer W. Kimball. Those are probably like the ones that come to my head first. A lot of the like the early ones, the ones that like founded the church, and then some of the later ones that were like really cringy.
I have an eyelash or something getting under my contact lens. Something's going crazy in my eye over here. And then you had mentioned Glenn Beck, obviously.
Yeah, my parents were really into him. We met him one time. He hosted the Stadium of Fire in Utah, and he had like before the stadium started, he like met with people, and we were a part of that group. It's so gross to say now, but yeah, we were there for that. And then he also hosted like a big thing in Washington, D.C., and we went to that, which is like the only time I've been out east.
Any other figures you can think of that weren't like directly essentially Mormon clergy, or even non-Mormon? I mean, non-LDS. My mom was really into Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. Yeah. Apart from that, no. See, here's what
unless you want to count Jesus, but you know.
I was doing this exercise on purpose because I was just going to keep asking like more like, okay, what about in this realm, in this realm? I'm waiting for. I do this on purpose because last week, because Nuance Ho came from a progressive family, it wasn't as clear cut, and it sort of was like, this isn't actually necessarily the typical Mormon experience. I was going to keep asking for more
Ronald
people
Reagan?
And more clarifying characters and stuff. I'm just waiting for you to name a woman that you were told to admire. And it takes forever to get there, if ever.
I don't think we would have gotten there, Jimmy. Right. I don't think that would have come up. Yeah. I honestly don't think so.
I mean,
unless it was like a direct family member of mine, like my great grandmother or something, but not like a historical figure or like somebody people know.
So can you, if I now directly ask, like, can you think of a woman that your mother or your father or anybody in your family or the people who were responsible for raising you that you were ever told to model yourself after? Surely there must have been one or two, right? Like Emma.
If it would have been anybody, it would have been my own family members. I mean, we didn't even talk that much about Emma, to be honest. I mean, at church maybe, but from my own family, not really.
Any women stories of admirable women? Like, do you remember like even them talking about Esther, watching the Esther cartoon cassette?
A little bit.
Yeah.
We actually had a neighbor across the street who played Esther, I think, in a church movie. And so there was a little bit of talk about that. But I don't know if it would have even been as prevalent as it was if I hadn't known the girl who played her in the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's flip the question. Can you think of, and you don't have to name them off because it might be rude. Can you think of women that your family or people responsible for raising you pointed to you as the type of woman you shouldn't be?
Absolutely. Do you want me to name some?
Yeah, go ahead. Start listing if you like. Do you want to name some?
I'm okay with it because I'm not this person anymore. But I mean, we heard about that. I mean, like when Hillary Clinton was running for president,
Eh.
I heard so many bad things. When Obama was president, when she was the first lady, like I heard a lot of bad things about her. I mean, the only as we're sitting here talking now, I'm like, oh, maybe I could talk about Sherry Dew because maybe we looked up to her. But honestly, when I was a kid, I didn't even know her name, so
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't count.
This is what the point I like making about this is what the system that preserves the patriarchal structure of Mormonism and other religions and especially Christian and I'd lump a lot of Islam into that as well. These very patriarchal religions, the way they do this is one, they separate the men from the raising of the family as much as they can. So men are the providers, women are the people who raise the kids. And then two, they teach the women only about admirable male role models. And the thing is that it's not just that. It's that you would have been taught admirable male role models so that you can then teach that to your sons. But as far as when you are in these, especially more conservative religions, basically like, if you're a child and you're a boy, you're going to be raised with be a man like this. And here's a guy who has this masculine trait to admire and this masculine trait to admire and model yourself after these men. And none of them are necessarily perfect men, but like your grandpa, sure, he would get into fights sometimes and he'd lose his temper, but he was great at this and this. And Joseph Smith did this and Brigham Young, he'd beat people up and, we're going to ignore the part about the whole murder and then all of the, non-consensual relationships and all that stuff. But anyway, he would do these things, but here's where he was strong and he wasn't. And so it was literally like even men with tremendous imperfections, you didn't throw out the whole man. You just took the great things about him and you were like, that's what you should model yourself after. Women, it's don't be a whore like this bitch. Don't be a slut like that hoe. Don't be they don't say it with those terms, but it's very much that energy. It's all about forget about whatever the all the amazing features this person might have. Alyssa was wearing shorts that went too high up on her legs and her entire value is now undermined by the fact that we think she was dressing slutty. Don't be slutty like Alyssa. Don't be. And then they leave they pile all of that into the children. And then they wonder, the patriarchy of Mormonism is, and again, all these religions, it's such a fucking incredible scam, not in a good way, if you think about it, because it's literally a system in place to make the women push it onto the sons because they've brainwashed the women into thinking that any small bad trait about a woman makes her valueless, but any good trait about a man makes him incredible. It's fucking insane. This is why I was bringing it up, because it was a harder experience to do with Nuanceau, who had a more progressive upbringing. It was like, yeah, no, there were some women that we were taught she didn't have quite the conservative upbringing. And when you have somebody in front of you where I was like, okay, that point that I was bad at making last week, here's the point I was
now
trying
I can
to
do
make.
it.
Yeah. Any
Well,
thoughts
now
on
that you're
that?
like talking about it, well, I was thinking about it and it was like there were a few people that I could think about that like, yeah, like these women were brought up in some way in like a positive light. And for the most part, they were women that I knew in my real life, like ward members and family members and things like that. But one person in particular that I remember having conversations with my mom about was a neighbor he was LDS, very faithful Mormon, had 8 children, homeschooled them. and, you know, had a very, like, was really into old fashioned things and like homemaking, and, you know, women should not work outside the home and all of these things. And that weirdly like comes up as the one of the only people I can think of that we talked about, like, yeah, she, you know, is a standard upon which we should look upon as what we should be.
Yeah.
A mother of 8 that doesn't believe that women should work outside of the home.
How old was when this person was introduced to you as a character that you should look up to? How old was that person?
Probably like 40. I don't know.
That's another thing I've noticed is it's almost never that you're a role model is like a contemporary example, like as somebody who's a peer or something like that. It's always like it's older women who have done such a life of submission that now it's always like they don't break out of their submissive personality ever. I mean, I even just think about like the women who would have been considered like any sort of standard bearer where I went to church would have been like the stake president's wife, who was a person who would never talk over any man, including like boys she was teaching in seminary. Very, very soft spoken, seemed always very polite and positive. But this is also the woman who I was in seminary listening to her tell the girls in the seminary class that the greatest thing they can become is a wife and homemaker, that is second to nothing. And listen, nobody is trying to take away that being a wife and even a homemaker isn't an admirable thing. It's this constant put down of any woman who would do anything else that is the bullshit of it all.
Exactly.
I can envision myself being in a relationship with somebody who wants to stay home. I provide I'm the income bringer, and they want to raise our kids and whatever. Like that actually doesn't sound like a bad life to me if I found the person who wanted to be the other side of that coin. It's about the choice and this idea that not only is this the best you can do, but everyone who doesn't do it isn't doing it because of some flaw about them that's usually sin-based. It's so gross.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you think about the transformed wife, I'm sure you're familiar with her. That exactly how she is how this woman was. And she was a pretty influential person in my life because some of my closest friends, she was their mother. And so I heard both from my friends and from her a lot of these ideas. And I remember even after I got married, within the first year, but probably within like the first 6 to 8 months, my friend her daughter reached out and was basically like, so are you guys like planning on starting a family? And I was like, yeah, but not like right away. We're still, we just barely got married and we don't have any money. And she sent me probably like 5 or 6 different links to the church website and different conference talks and quotes of prophets and apostles saying, you should not wait to have children. It doesn't matter what your financial situation is, blah, blah, blah. And she basically was just trying to get me to have children immediately, even though we were absolutely not ready. And I think at the time I was Mormon too. And so seeing that, I was like, yeah, like, she's kind of right. I do need to do that. We need to, settle down and have kids, but I'm just worried about the money. But maybe I shouldn't be. I should just trust the Lord to provide. If we pay our tithing, everything will be fine. But that's, I didn't like disagree with her.
Right.
And we had nothing.
Right. It's literally like, it's just a systemic bullying tactic where the older generations dictate to the younger generations that their life must be structured the same way that their life was. And because I figured it out, clearly that means you'll figure it out too. Even though it's like, it's kind of like when people say the whole like, hey, my parents spanked me and I turned out great. And you're like, no, you turned out like shit. Are you kidding me?
You think it's okay to hit kids.
Right. Your self-evaluate, even if that's the only thing. Yeah. But no, I've heard that from like siblings of mine where they're like, obviously our parents did blah, blah, blah. And I turned out, and it's like, you you're the fucking worst person I know. If I saw you on the street and we were headed toward each other, I would cross the road to not, just so no one would even see us and go like, hey, they kind of look alike. I don't want to associate you with any way. You are a fucked up piece of shit. What are you talking about? You turned out okay. And it's like that level of stuff where they're like, hey, we figured it out. We figured it, which basically means like, you should also have to go through the stressful thing of figuring out who you can get money from for this and who you can basically to ask to support you. And we can create a system by where you become dependent on financial support from other Mormons. And at times, if you use the church's welfare program, and that dependence is going to make sure it is super hard for you to leave. Because now if you leave, not only do you have to leave because you realize not only will you have left realizing it's not true, you'll leave with this pressure and all these people attacking you for how you're ungrateful for all the things they did for you or that the church did for you. It's this disgusting, it really is a part of, they know that statistically, if they get kids to marry young and don't let them fuck until they marry, that's the first part of it. You don't get to have sex or even masturbate until you're married. And then when you still can't masturbate when you're married, but you can have sex. And then, so they're going to marry young. Cool. Get them to marry young, then start getting them to pop out kids. They know that if they follow this routine, the chances of these people and their families leaving the church go way down because they're creating more community pressure to not leave or to even consider leaving, which is the hard part when you debate with these like stupid people on Twitter about the church or anywhere. And you're like, I'm engaging with somebody who can't even permit themselves to consider whether or not the church is true. And we're discussing whether the church is true. This is a pointless endeavor.
Right.
They can't even allow them to think that it might not be true. It makes it feel a little bit, I don't know, purposeless, useless, to even engage in these convos.
I am not on Twitter because at this time I was not on Twitter. This was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. I was on Facebook scrolling through and I came across, I think it was like on KSL News, which is like a Utah news website, that somebody had, I think it was like they had put graffiti on a highway or something. It was like Joseph Smith is a pedophile or something like that. And I read through the comments, like first mistake, but there was a guy on there like talking about how Joseph Smith is like all of these terrible things. And I ended up getting in a conversation with him. And we had an argument about this because this was back when, I cared to have internet arguments with people. And I ended up being like, okay, like we're not getting anywhere, but I have a really strong testimony and I can tell that this person, he just has been offended by something. He's like mad at God. So if I talk to him, like I'm going to be able to get through to him using the Spirit of Christ and he's going to like rejoin the church. So I friended him and I remember him saying like, just so you know, I post a lot of anti-Mormon stuff and it's going to make you, he's like, you're not going to like it. I'm like, it's fine. Like we can totally get along. And so we were friends on Facebook for a couple of years and totally disagreed on absolutely everything. And probably like 4 years after that, I left the church and I was like, oh my God, like all that stuff he said to me, like is stuff I'm now like open to, thinking about, whereas at the time, like it wasn't at all. But I went back and found him after that because, at this point I had blocked him. I don't even remember exactly what for, but I had blocked him and I went back and I found him.
I'm sure the Spirit told you to.
I went back and found him and I apologized and I was like, I left the church and everything that like we had disagreements about, I can't believe you were right, but I was not in the right, frame of mind to listen to you at that point. So these days when I come across people or like have disagreements with people or, Mormons are in my or Twitter making rude comments, I always think about that. And I'm like, it might not happen right now, but at some point they might be more open and change their minds and maybe they'll come back and think about that at some point. And so I don't know. I don't think it's completely useless, but I do think that people are not willing to think about it until they are, you know what I mean? Like at some point in their lives may reach a point where they're willing to consider the idea that possibly what they've been raised to believe is not reality.
Yeah, like I said,
and then they'll come back and say sorry.
It feels useless, and yet I do it for a living. So I know it's not useless because I've gotten the emails, I've gotten the messages from people saying like, "Yo, that turned into this, which turned into this, and now I'm not a whatever." And so it's just in that moment when you put yourself in their frame of mind, and you're like, "Oh, I remember being this person, being so sure of myself for no good reason." Because it wasn't a surety of even their conviction is never actually a conviction in the position. It's the conviction of their inability to be wrong. I couldn't feel, the human, couldn't have this level of feeling that this is true if it isn't true. Because that would mean I failed in this regard intellectually, and that's not an option. It's entirely... it's sort of like there are different things that are meant sort of psychological concepts that talk about like the death of the ego. And the ego is one of the things I love talking about the most because most people just hear that word and have a negative feeling about it. Literally, it's like saying brain at this point, the death of the brain, and you being like, well, here are brain related terms that are negative. And so that makes brain. Ego is something everybody has. Your personality is made up of in fact, you have an ego. I think it's an ego, a super ego, and an id. And those three things are basically your personality. It's the way you're expressing yourself. And there are certain things that attack your ego, your sense of self, your sense of confidence, your sense of whatever. And so like, for example, people will talk about it with, if you are experiencing suicide ideation or just feeling like you don't want to live anymore, that's actually something that's happening when you get to that level that you're close and you're like super depressed, you're not eating at all of those things come down. That's actually a ginormous attack on your ego that you have to reverse to get out of, because the ego is actually an important part of it. Anyway, this is the problem with Mormonism is it ingrains itself into your ego, your personal sense of self. And to become not a Mormon anymore, you have to kill your ego, a good portion of it. It doesn't mean you no longer have an ego. It's impossible to not have an ego. And eventually you develop, your ego has different characteristics later and it develops, but it's like dying. Like I just think about Mormon Jimmy versus ex-Mormon Jimmy. And I can't defend that in a very real way. Mormon Jimmy isn't dead now. Because that person's psychological experience, the way he perceives the world, doesn't anymore exist. He's gone. I have all of his memories and he's gone. But in the same sense of like, if I don't wake up tomorrow, my brain shuts off and it's not doing its thing anymore. It's sort of like, I'm not certain that he hasn't literally died. And this animated person now in a psychological sense is a totally different person who operates a different way, but I get all of his memories and I get all of that stuff. It is truly like you're talking to people and saying like, hey man, a part of you needs to die. If you think about it, like or start to die or even be open to dying so that the you that is actually built on a personality that is self-driven, a family that is self-chosen, all of this stuff, so that person can be born. It feels like that is the level of, it puts it into perspective, I think, why it's so hard. Because you're sort of asking people to, in a way, die and be born as something else. Because you can't recognize the idea of, think about like, give me if you've got any thoughts on this. Yes, I know I'm getting awfully close to the term born again. But think about think about yourself back when you were Mormon. Could you even conceptualize what a person not Mormon you would look like? Yeah.
No.
It's like you would In fact, you're programmed to assume that you're going to be just sort of like lost and wandering and sinning and going from whorehouse to whorehouse and bar to bar and just letting anybody use your body for whatever you want and doing anything for a nickel, because that's sort of the way they try to make you think ex-Mormons live, that they all leave to go be miserable drug addict whores, which... I'm not addicted to any drugs, but drugs are dope, and I aspire to be a whore. Stop making us think of that term negatively, you pieces of shit. And it's I don't know. That thought experiment, I feel like, puts into perspective for me why it's so hard to get these people to even think about it. When I think about myself, do you have any thoughts on that? You can totally disagree with me. I won't yell at you if you're like, no, I didn't die. And
No,
whatever.
I agree with you. I actually, when you first started that tangent, talking about how, like, as a person in that, sort of frame of mind, you cannot conceptualize, not even just Mormonism not being true, but like, your whole idea of how the world operates and the fact that there is a God, like, and that,
Right.
and that's something that
That's what Yeah.
That was actually, like, that was one of the things that I disagreed with this Facebook friend about. Was he had made something on Facebook about, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how sure are you that there either is or is not a God? And I remember at the time being like, 100%.
Right.
It's a 10. I know,
Right.
And
Can
he
I
was
go
like,
beyond
how
10?
can you know that?
It's a 12, actually. Yeah.
And it's so funny, like, looking back on that, because it really was just, it was how I viewed the world, because I had been raised that way. There was never a question. That's just the way the world was. It was like, as much as I knew the world was round, I knew that there was a God, and I knew
Right.
that Mormonism was true, because that there was no other reality for me. And having to accept that I was absolutely wrong for 25 years was really hard.
Traumatic.
And I would say that there's also this, and there was also this point of, like, going from that to, like, oh, I was super, super, super wrong. There's also, at least in my case, I feel like there was a point at which my ego goes back up too high and is like, okay, well, now I'm really smart and I know better.
Yeah.
And then I kind of had to, like, go down a little bit and be like, okay, calm down. You're not on top of the world yet. Like, you're just figuring things out. Take a deep breath.
I think that's not actually so it's funny because your ego has components. So, like, arrogance can be a component of your ego, but it's not actually everyone must have an ego. Otherwise you will just be a weird robot person who, like, more so than I am already a weird robot person. So even colloquial terms we have, like, you're very egotistical. It's like, you're bad at language, even though I use these things too. And I fall for the problem of, my God, the number of narcissists that exist according to other people's unqualified diagnoses. I also participate in that colloquial. I actually just recorded an episode for Jimmy Snow where I'm like, everybody needs to shut up and stop calling everyone a narcissist. Anyway, here's a video about a narcissist, and I do the same thing. But now it's so overused that when you point to people who seem to be very genuine examples, and even therapists would agree, like a Donald Trump, like an Andrew Tate. But now it's like, but also, how about everybody I don't like in my life is also a narcissist? Every single person. It's the bizarrest thing. You could almost say that one of the qualifying criteria to be a narcissist is I don't like you anymore. And that's who a narcissist is. Anyway, we should get to calls. I do have, let me check on the screener because we've had some, because we've had some people waiting. Everything. But we've gone on for a long time, and there have been people waiting on hold, but there's other calls waiting to be screened too. So we'll get to that. But let's take some. Well, these questions so far, I don't know about the people who are waiting on to be screened, but these questions so far aren't really Mormon related, but they're sort of, I guess, topic related. We'll start with Marlon in the Philippines. Oh, I didn't copy your name correctly. Marlon in the Philippines, you are on the line.
you.
Sorry, Marlon. We weren't able. I just fixed it. We can hear you now.
How are you guys?
Just fine. How are you, Marlon?
I'm still kind of recovering from an injury, but
Yeah, hey, Marlon, you sound
I'll feel
extremely,
better.
real quick, you sound very far away from your phone or maybe on speaker or something. And it's pretty hard to actually make out what you're saying because you are so quiet.
Can you hear me now?
It's very similar, but we'll do our best. You want to just give us your question there?
Yes. I'm still recovering from an injury,
Sure.
but I'll feel better with a few band-aids because of this demonstration that was done on me for me to be wanting to, like, I want to experience this for myself at the church with my pastor after praying. Because I've been shocked by lightning, lightning from his hands.
Wait, sorry. Are you saying that you were shocked by lightning which came out of your pastor's hands?
Yes, because I wanted to know the truth with that, what's behind it. Because with fire from hands,
Marlon,
they can work
hang
their
on,
way
Marlon.
around it,
We can't just jump past that because we're definitely not just going to grant you that this happened. So what you're telling me is that you went to a pastor wanting to experience some kind of miracle and that lightning shot from the pastor's hands, that you visibly saw lightning shoot from the pastor's hands, and it hit your body. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
He shook my hands and I was electrocuted.
Well, you weren't electrocuted because you're alive, but you're saying, so you didn't see lightning. You believe you touched somebody's hand and you felt electricity rush through your body. Is that correct?
Well, I saw sparks and of lightning from his hands.
I think there's a language thing going on here, because when you say lightning, I think of the thing that shoots from a cloud to the ground or from the ground to the cloud, depending on who you ask. I'm talking about lightning and thunder. I think you're saying that you visibly saw electricity, that there was an electric current.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And who else witnessed this? Was it just you and the pastor?
More than hundreds of people, Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. And so hundreds of people, I assume this is documented on video somewhere, right?
On the news, on the local news.
On the local news?
Yes.
So where can I find the video of this happening?
Well, it's documented on the local newspaper.
Oh, so not on video, it's in a newspaper.
Yes.
Somebody wrote down that it happened.
Yes.
All right, Marlon, I'm just going to give you the quick version because this is going to be a waste of time. I'm going to give you the quick version.
Okay.
A few different things might have happened. Marlon, one, you could just be a liar. I've known lots of liars. I've never known a person who can wield the power of electricity. So, it seems statistically more likely that you're a liar. Second, you could be the victim of a liar and somebody who was doing a feat that sounds less impressive than about 90% of Chris Angel's act, but was able to create some sort of visible light experience where someone saw the flow of electricity. I will tell you, if you start going around telling people the story that you were struck with lightning from a pastor's hand and were then electrocuted, what that literally means is the sort of stuff that comes from a cloud hit you and then you died, because that's what all of those words mean. So look, I get it. English isn't your first language, so I'm trying to help you know how you can improve it. So these are the options so far. Either you're a liar or you're the victim of the liar. I guess the third option is that your pastor has the ability to magically wield lightning based on, is this a Christian pastor, Marlon? Which type of pastor is he?
Bible Baptist.
Okay, so a Baptist pastor has these very supernatural powers. However, they only work in front of people writing in the newspaper. None of the people's cameras apparently captured this experience. As far as the experience of the viewer, what most of them would have seen is he puts his hand in your hand and then you shake a lot like you are receiving an electric charge, which, by the way, this is where I got into that second option is you are the victim of a liar and you are susceptible to basically performance hypnosis. Because again, I've seen much more interesting acts from people who address the fact that they are doing a bit, that they are doing a performance. But Marlon, at the end of the day, how would we verify that any of this happened and it happened the way you perceive it as happening?
Because I was there and it happened to me. I even passed out.
How do I verify anything that happened to you?
Well, it's from a news.
A newspaper is not going to show me the experience that you just said. A newspaper is also completely susceptible to the opinions of the writer, the editor, and the like. What is the proof of any of this?
I was thinking about the science behind this because the human body has electricity, right?
Yes, there's electricity in the human body.
I think the electricity in this body has been amplified for some reason.
I can now hear the cars going by wherever you are louder than I can hear you.
I'm in the city.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying wherever your mic is closer to the street than it is to your mouth.
Yes, it's the location.
Hey, Marlon, is the electricity what caused your injury?
Yes.
And that's what you're recovering from now?
I have band-aids on my hand.
So instead of healing you like a Baptist pastor might do, this Baptist pastor injured you to prove you God exists.
Yes, because he said I was doubting the fire from his hands.
Yeah, Marlon, I'm not sure whether it's a therapist you need or somebody to convince you to not call into shows completely full of shit. But one of you is completely full of shit. Go ahead and email me whatever links you like to the actual evidence of this. I want to yell at you, but at the same time, I'm open to the idea that you're actually the victim of somebody else's scam. So you go ahead and send me whatever you like, and you'll probably see a follow-up video at some point of me absolutely shitting on your charlatan of a Baptist pastor.
Okay, got it.
Cool. Goodbye, Marlon.
I'm kind of a victim.
Later, dude. Goodness gracious. I'm sorry I didn't give you a piece of that. I just didn't know what to even do with it. It just seems like an entire waste of time.
I was just reading the live chat.
You're having fun over there. I don't know what to do with that. Your pastor injured you with lightning from his hands, which electrocuted you. Like, again, I don't want to make fun of somebody's what is probably a language barrier, but I also don't know how it is that you've only learned the most extreme versions of these words. He obviously knew electricity. You know, there were static sparks apparently, but lightning, like fucking Thor could throw at you. And by the way, so people know, electrocute means to die of electricity. Like it's a combination of electricity and execute. You are not electrocuted when you feel a little shock. You might be shocked, you might be electrified, you might be charged, but you're not electrocuted.
I was picturing more like the pastor just like rubbed his socks on the floor.
Right.
And they like maybe shook hands or something.
Right. And look, we kind of talked about it on yesterday's show about Jesus Christ, was yesterday? When is time? Maybe it was the day before, but we talked about like faith healers and these people who do like hypnosis shows and things like that. And how people, when, you know, the person comes forward and is like, and I command ye to faint, and some of them legitimately faint. You can be convinced that you are having an experience. It does not mean anything of significance is really happening. And so to be in a group setting in front of hundreds of people where you know what the expectation of your performance is, that's literally just how hypnotists operate. People who are doing it
Peer
for
pressure.
entertainment are absolutely counting on you to do what's expected of you, which is again why I mentioned when we talked about it the other night, I think it was last night, they always start with a group of people and some sort of test that they're saying is the how susceptible to you are to hypnosis test is. And they quickly filter out the people who aren't going to play along so easily and just show you. And then when you're the next group of people, I don't know if you've ever seen like any of Darren Brown's shows, but like they did like funny experiments where they would just have, you'd have a person in a room and every time a beep would go off, they would either stand up or if they were standing, they would sit down. And so then they'd bring another person in who wasn't in on it. And the beep would go off and the person would stand up and then the beep would go off and he would sit down. And then the next time the beep would go off, the guy would stand with him and just be like, apparently this is what, and then they'd start adding more and more people to the room until eventually
Literally
you have a room full
pressure.
of, right. You're just doing in the position what you think is expected of you that nobody else is questioning. So why would you question it? It's just,
Right.
I don't understand how people don't want to be taken advantage of. They want to live in the world where they can be gullible and susceptible to charlatans. How is it not like, I think about like masculine culture, the way it's like, you got to learn how to fight, you got to learn how to kill, you got to learn how to blah, 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 blah. That's all to be a man. To be a man, you got to do that. But it's not like, also, you need to learn how to not pay $2,000 for a mediocre vacuum. I'm making fun of Kirby's right now. Like, you got to learn that. Okay, I have an alarm that keeps going off downstairs that I think people keep hearing. Will you tell people about your favorite Pokemon while I run downstairs and turn it off? What's your favorite Pokemon? Okay. And as soon as I get back, we're going to take a call from somebody who's got a Mormonism related call. But yeah, I'll be right back.
Okay, do your thing. We could talk about my favorite Pokemon, which is not that interesting, but I think we should talk about somebody in the comments saying Pastor Palpatine because I almost lost my mind. That was so funny. And is the pastor a Pokemon? I laughed pretty hard at that one too. I was trying to not lose my mind because I didn't want to be rude, but that was so funny. Favorite Pokemon. I don't know if I have a favorite Pokemon because there's over 1,000 of them and I have a hard time picking a favorite when there's that many options. But here is my one thing with Pokemon. If you are the type of person that says, I only liked first gen Pokemon, that means you used to like Pokemon because that's just a cop-out at this point. It's been so long. Hi, Jimmy.
Which Pokemon did you go with?
I didn't even go with a Pokemon. I can't pick out of 1,000 Pokemon. There's just too many. I'm sorry.
I can. Alakazam. Forever and always.
I'm glad that you could do that. I can't do that. I can't pick a favorite song. I can't pick a favorite Pokemon.
Can you pick a team of 6?
Color, but that's about it.
Can you pick a team of 6 Pokemon? Like it's your official Pokemon team?
I can't do it. There's too many options. I can't do that.
I'd be heavily in the psychic dark side. It'd be like Alakazam, Gallade, Umbreon. I'd probably throw Blaziken in there, though. I'd probably mix it up and have that fire. Though, if I wanted to stay psychic, I could switch it up to Delphox. Because I also like Delphox, but I like Blaziken's whole aesthetic more. And then who would my other 2 be? I'd probably throw Gardevoir in there too. I'd probably do Gallade and Gardevoir. I do understand people if you're like, this wouldn't be a very competitive team. I gotta tell y'all, I don't think I would make, if Pokemon was in the real world, I don't think I'd make them fight each other for my entertainment. I'd be doing the team of things I like. I'd be using my psychic Pokemon to ruin all the humans around me.
In the games, it makes it seem like they like that.
Right, I know.
They like fighting each other for your entertainment and your money.
Yeah. I'm super stoked on this. Yeah, no, I know. It's it'd be a weird thing to actually do in real life, but yeah. Oh man, I don't know who my.
Fair, the whole Mormon thing of like getting your own planet. One of my ideas was like having Pokemon be real. It's like, if I can make my own planet, we're gonna have Pokemon in real life.
It's really sweet that you thought you would get a choice over what the planet would look like and not your husband.
Stop. I don't want to talk about that.
That really is the case. Like, you would have had to convince your husband to make a Pokemon planet is what would have had to have happened. That's
so unfair.
I know. That is the real church. For people who are watching, that is true.
Heavenly Mother doesn't get a say.
That's right. Okay. None of them do, because keep in mind, it's not just one. It ain't just one Heavenly Mother. There's going to be lots of them. And polygamy will come back in the afterlife, and you'll be outnumbered too. That's... I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter. This is my jam. Day Saints. Go ahead.
That gives me PTSD. I swear. I had this vision of myself as like an 8 or 9-year-old being like, if somebody ever put a gun to my head and asked if you better deny God or I'm going to kill you, I would start singing, I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then they would either be so moved that I would live, they wouldn't kill me because I was like so spiritual, or if they did kill me, I would go straight to heaven and be in paradise for all eternity because I'm such a good person. As like an 8-year-old, I thought that in my head.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, I just reopened some extra lines. If you called, I forgot to tell the screener that we had different setup for tonight. If you call with a Mormonism specific question, we're not going to limit you based on whether you're an atheist or theist like we do on other shows. So if you called in with a Mormonism question and you were told, this is my fault, don't blame the screener. If you called in with a Mormonism related question and you were told, sorry, we don't have any more atheist lines open, go ahead and call back in and we'll get those on there, because that was entirely my fault. And so I'll let the screener know that I told them to call in. I told the chat I boo-booed. We'll just say that. Okay. Cool. Let's talk to Rich in New York, who has just a societal question, I think, about maybe some reverse sexism he's worried about. Rich, how you doing?
All right. You call me choking.
It's all good. I choke on here all the time.
I had an interesting conversation today.
Okay.
Someone brought up, would it be inappropriate for a woman to propose marriage to a man? And as we talked about it, I started to realize how absolutely misogynist the entire thing is.
Sure.
The woman has no control of when or who she marries. If someone does not ask her to get married, she's fucked.
Yeah.
And so I said, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Well, what would you feel about a woman asking you to marry her? And my gut reaction was, I would ask her. But then I started thinking, I said, what is the problem with it? There is so much insidious misogyny, and as a black man, it's just like the insidious racism, like what happened to that poor guy in Memphis. All of this is so deeply ingrained enough that even us who think that we're progressive will think that a woman shouldn't propose to us. It is absolutely crazy.
Yep.
And I just was. It's a discussion like you talk about. You never hear a good thing said about a woman. Not that you never. It's very seldom. It's always a criticism. But to that point, it's the same sort of thing. These things that we have in our society that we stand by and we think are so great, but when you start unpacking them and deconstructing them, they're not that great.
Oh, and their origins are even worse. So the whole concept of the reason why we still have the idea that the man should propose to the woman, which is obviously very heteronormative in the first place. Imagine the crisis that a lesbian couple must have. Who's going to ask who? But
you just never ask the question. You just do it.
All of that exists as it's at least now it's the woman you ask, because the original tradition is woman is property. You ask the father who owns the woman to pass his ownership from him to you. And
we still do that in a damn wedding.
Right. We still represent it in a lot of weddings. But yeah, I mean, I think if I was expecting a call where somebody was going to ask like, hey, why would you all support this sort of marriage tradition? I don't think either Lex or I would have a problem with a woman asking a man to marry as opposed to the tradition goes. But so I'm sad it wasn't as salty a call as I thought it was going to end up being. But other than that, yeah, we totally agree.
I'm sorry, I don't do salty. And can I just relay this one experience? We talk about getting laid on by the hands. I grew up in a very religious family, loving family, great family, but steeped in religion. And I remember going up to the altar the first time, and the emotion is not only God, and because I've unpacked this. The fear. Yeah. I was like 9, 10 years old, scared shitless to walk up to this altar. So I'm shaking. The music is going on, but I'm going up there and God's going to help me. When I get up there, I'm lightheaded as hell.
Yeah.
I'm freaking out inside. All this shit's going on inside of me. No wonder half of the people almost faint up there.
Yeah. No. It's very controllable. You can predict during, like, when you're writing a talk and this is going to be the moment everybody feels the spirit. Like, it's a performance. It's the same. And you can do it with other things that aren't nefarious. You can say, like, this crescendo in the music is going to give people a sense of fullness in their chest. You can craft lots of things this way.
Yep. And then the crazy thing about it is after that, it never happened again. And I was like a crack addict, chasing that experience as a kid right into my teens. I really was. I would go, okay, you know what? Maybe I just wasn't good enough, and this time God will touch me again. Yeah. I go up there at the altar, and I'm standing there, I'm praying, I'm looking around, I'm like, what the fuck? Help me here. And you go through this constantly. Even when I got baptized at 15, I'm like, okay, the Lord's skies are going to open. I'm going to pass out in the water. They're going to, you know what happened? Nothing.
Bunch of nothing. Yeah, I get it.
I spent years chasing that crap. It's
Lex,
so funny.
Let me ask Lex, in relation to your first question, were you asked your opinion on your marriage first, or was your father's permission granted before the conversation began? What happened in your situation?
Well, in typical Mormon fashion, my husband brought up marriage on our second date. So
that's true.
The question passed by
that
me
late.
First.
Wow. Waited that long. Second date. My goodness.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, tell you, it is incredible that our marriage lasted through leaving the church, and it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it actually did get it brought up to me first, only because he was very excited to start the conversation.
Yeah. I can imagine so. Was he a returned missionary?
Yep.
Yeah. So at least 21 years of pretending to never masturbate and really wanting to fuck. Well, presumably not the first 10 years. We'll say 11 years of it. Like, I imagine he very much wanted to have that conversation quickly. I get it. Rich, any other questions for us before we let you go? And
just again, touching on what she just said, in my family, in my church, and I watch in many churches, you see more serial marriage because of this issue.
Exactly.
People break their marriage breaks up.
Yep.
They fall in love, and they get married in 3 months because they want to have sex.
Yeah.
And they do this. I know people, God-fearing men who have been married 5, 6 times.
This is why all you got to do is go to Vegas with somebody, get married, get divorced after a week, solid prenup, everything just goes away. Don't get an annulment, get a divorce, And now you can never have premarital sex again. It'll all be postmarital.
Oh, that's you know what? Someone should have told me that when I was like 13 or 14.
Just gave you a loophole.
Have done that.
Unfortunately, I don't know if the loophole stands up in Mormon court. Well, I know it wouldn't there, but just a fun little joke. All right,
gosh.
Rich, thanks for talking. I always like talking to a New Yorker. It's good to talk to you. See you, Rich.
Yep. Bye-bye.
I always say my family because I can't really solidly claim I'm from anywhere. We moved around so much that I pretty much say now I'm from Denver. That's like the place I lived the most. It molded me the most. I came into my adulthood the most. Like Denver, even though I spent 0 of my childhood in Denver, I feel from Denver now that I've left Denver. But New York is where my family is from. So but we moved around a lot. I can't say that I lived longer I'm more from Tennessee than I am from New York. I'm more from Florida than I am from New York. I'm not probably more from Louisiana, not Maryland, but we moved a lot. I'm definitely more from Wyoming than I am from New York anymore. And where I was born has
tragic.
Nothing on me. I know. We were the only people in all of Wyoming. The entire population was my family. There's some people who wouldn't be positive I was joking. Like, wait, I think I heard when we first found out we were moving to Wyoming, I was going to school in Louisiana. And I told my friends and they were like, isn't Wyoming the state with no humans, with no people population?
Yes.
I'm like, no, well, yeah.
Only go there for Yellowstone. That's the only thing that's there.
And that's because that's the only good thing there. Like there's not really anything else worth going to. Sorry, I'm just getting notes and stuff ready and queued up here. All right. I actually want to all right, let's start with we'll just go in order here, but there's some very, very interesting calls queuing up. Let me tell you all that much. Let me also probably cap there. What is your time constraint look like?
I'm good.
Okay, cool. Because I want to get through calls. I want to do super chats, and then after the show, I want to keep you for maybe another 10 to 15 minutes to just record something quick exclusively for my channel's patrons. If you're cool with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
That'd be dope. All right, cool. Then we'll probably pop through these a little bit quickly. But let's talk to David in Virginia, who is an atheist and wants to talk about how deeply involved. I don't know if you want to talk about how deeply involved you were or we were in Mormonism.
Oh no, how deeply I was.
Gotcha.
I've been watching your show for a long time. I think I left the church the same time you did, Jimmy.
Gotcha. So David, let me just put this here because we have to be fair and I have to apply this rule sort of across the board. If you've got a quick summary that's only a couple of tweets length that you want to offer, and then it turns into a question that you want us to react to, address, or whatever, that's fine. We really try hard to not make these call-in shows like an open mic sort of show, because it's not really fair to the audience, basically, is the thing. So that's basically what the only guidance I'm going to give you. If you want to give a quick summary and then turn that into something you want to hear back from Lex or I. Otherwise, if it's just something you want to share with us, put it in long form and throw it to us in an email or something.
Okay, I'll just talk to you about your experiences within the temple. Like, how many times you went to the temple endowment sessions?
Sure.
Saw the movies and all that rigmarole. How much experience do you have inside the temple?
Lex, your answer will be much bigger than mine. Go ahead. Do you want to respond first?
Sure. As a teenager, I went probably 2 to 3 times a year, just doing the baptisms for the dead and confirmations for the dead. And as an adult, after going through and doing my endowment session, we probably went once, maybe twice a year. So I would say I probably went 12 times before we ended up leaving the church.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So do you have any experiences or memories of the movies that they showed you during the endowment sessions?
I think that, going through the first time is probably the one that sticks out the most, just because I was shocked that they were like, that was the thing. Like we were going in like a movie theater, they turn off all the lights and you watch a movie, because I was expecting a lot different than going in and watching a movie. I was expecting to learn like a big new secret or something. Like I was expecting for, the heavens to be opened and for me to understand a new concept or something. And then when it was like, we're putting on a movie and it's Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
It's a story that you've already heard 10 million times. I was like, this is the thing. This is the big thing that we're learning.
Yeah.
But did you go with your parents for the first endowment, or were you with family?
The first time I ever went was my parents were there, my in-laws were there, and my grandparents were there.
So I guess the feeling of when you finally go through the veil and you're in the celestial room and they're all sitting there in that big white room and you're all just sitting there and looking at each other, kind of going, yeah, this is nice, I guess.
Yeah.
Trying to get the
it was like
involved somewhat. Right.
Well, when we're sitting in the endowment session the first time and, everybody is wearing these outfits, like the Chef Boyardee kind of getup. I remember being like, having the thought are we in a cult? Like I felt very uncomfortable, and we go through the whole thing. We get to the point where, you go through the movie, and we get to the point where you go through the veil, basically the big curtain. And I was like, okay, so we're going to the celestial room. This is the point at which like I'm going to learn a new thing. And when I got in there and it was just a big, white, elaborately decorated room, I felt pretty let down. But at the time I had this thought in my head, like, okay, well, I didn't learn anything new, but I am with my family. And I think that was, my sort of like indoctrinated brain was like, this all makes sense because at the end of it, you're with your family, and that's how it is in real life. So maybe the whole point that I'm supposed to get from this experience is that you go through all of this and you experience life, and at the end of it, you just get to be with your family. And the best, but I was like, it totally makes sense. And outwardly, when my family asked me, afterwards, I was like, yeah, like it was great. Like I have learned so much from this experience. But with hindsight being 2020, I really felt let down by the whole experience, to be honest.
Yeah, I had gone through the temple like during while I was a Mormon like 50 times. And I get to the point where I was going pretty often at a certain point, and I go to the celestial room and I maybe sit toward the end like a minute. I'm like, yeah, I'm not getting any answers to my prayers. All right, I'm gonna go. I don't know why I kept going.
Yeah.
And then I stopped going, and but it was that the previous caller, Rich, who was talking about just trying so hard and not getting an answer, and just keep working on it. Maybe this time I'll get an answer. Maybe this time I'll get revelation, but it just never happened.
Right. My dad went every single Sunday, or no, not Sunday. I think it was like every single Monday for an entire year once. And I wondered, because they do tell you that you should go as often as you possibly can. And the prophet, really pushed that. And so I think people do it because you're told that if you continuously do it, you are going to eventually get what you're searching for, basically. And even as a child, I remember going through being like 12 years old and doing baptisms for the dead. And they would tell us, like in seminary, I would hear stories about, oh yeah, my second cousin, twice removed, went to the temple and was baptized. And every time she was dunked, she would come back up and see a figure of light that would thank her for, doing this temple work for her. And so every time I went to the temple, I was waiting to have my own like really big spiritual experience because I'd been told these stories, and it never happened for me.
Yeah. And then, and my mom is super, I guess, spiritual. So she told me a lot of stories of like things she's seen at the temple, and I could see my grandfather, blah, blah, blah. And I was expecting this experience so intimate with my ancestors, and I was just so, too rational, I guess, about it, and then boom, never happened. So
it seems to me that when you hear a lot of those experiences and then you start to ask follow-up questions and scrutinize, much like some of the witnesses of the Book of Mormon, suddenly becomes, well, I saw them in my mind's eye. So
yeah, no,
your spiritual eyes.
I don't accept that.
Yeah. Not to mention everybody's dressed the same and sort of like at a certain point you might have just seen an old guy in a big white thing with a weird apron on.
I actually did old white guys with aprons on.
Funny enough, I've only been to two temples. I think I've only been to the Manhattan Temple and the Orlando Temple. Don't think I ever went to the New Orleans Temple, nor do I physically drove past the Denver. I pulled up into it like a month before I left because I lived like 10 minutes away, maybe not even that, from the Denver Temple when I was moving away. But I only did baptisms for the dead twice. And otherwise, my parents, we weren't allowed to like be in little league or football because it would have been too much for them to have to do. They were like, we wouldn't have shown up to your games and we didn't want people to judge us for never being there and stuff like that. Basically, anything that would have required effort on their part, they didn't do. So the only times like I went to the temple was in Manhattan with my grandparents and then in Orlando as part of a larger trip. I didn't go inside, but I went to the Salt Lake Temple when our young men's group from Cheyenne went to General Conference and, we walked sort of up to the temple. But other than that, no significant temple work. And I knew the church wasn't true, though I was still secretly in the church before I would have gotten my endowment. So I just kept putting it off. And then eventually it was revealed, I was ousted by my brother that I didn't believe anymore.
Well, you missed out on some great movies.
No, I've seen them still. They're available on the internet. You can find them. I've seen them. They're not that great. They're pretty boring.
Anyway,
it depends on which one you watch.
Yeah. And then God
the blonde or the brunette.
I just like the repetitious nature of like how bureaucratic almost the process of creating the world was. Like, Adam and Jesus are coming back to give their report to God and they're speaking in these weird complete sentences like they're reading them off of an acquisition form. Like, and by the way, we will
down.
And we're going to need to expand the budget before we break ground this weekend. If I could request.
It was just unnecessary amount of time that Jesus walked between the disciples and God the Father.
Yeah.
It was just like walk.
Yeah.
Hey guys,
Tedious.
guess what we need to do? Okay, let's go. All right, Jesus walks back, walk, goes all the way back to the disciples. He's like, hey, guess what?
Yeah. See, I'd have been more interested if then there was like a narrator narrating the thoughts of all the people that are just sitting there, like standing there. Like you just hear the guy who narrated Arrested Development, Ron Howard's voice, just like, and we really didn't know what he was going to. Anyway, David, thank you for calling. Anything else before we let you go?
Thank you. Nope, I'm
cool.
good.
We'll see.
Snorlax.
Snorlax is dope. Cool. I like
He's
that.
He's the best one.
He's cool. You can sleep on him. Later.
Yep. Later.
That is nice. A Pokemon that's basically a bed, which knowing Pokemon, eventually they'll just come out with a Pokemon that is a bed. It'll literally just be like a bed with, they've done a car now.
Pokemon.
They'd already done car keys. They did a car keys Pokemon before they did a car Pokemon. That's sort of whack.
A motor Pokemon.
Yeah, right. And you can't even get the coolest version of it. The one that you fight against in the series, which is fucking also whack. There should not be any type of Pokemon that you show us that we don't have the ability to get for ourselves, assholes.
True.
Hopefully it becomes like a Terra Raid event and you can get it before long. Anyway, let's talk to you want to go by Golden Calf in South Carolina. Golden Calf, what did you want to ask about?
I was wondering if this story I have is odd for Mormon, I guess, missionaries. My mother, this is like at the latest 2010s, was approached. They called her by name, using her, what's it called, pre-marriage name. I don't remember.
Maiden name?
Which is, yes, maiden name,
Yeah.
which was Young, and informed her that we are related to Brigham. Is that like a tactic to try to get us to be Mormon? Is that like them just bullshitting because they somehow knew our name? Are you familiar with that happening? Or like, are we legitimately related and they somehow traced us even though we have nothing to do with Mormonism?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know which one that is. It's certainly one of them, right? Like it's either they did their research and they actually knew who she was and all of that stuff. You're saying that her maiden name was Young, or just her maiden name was one they said means she's related to Brigham Young?
Her maiden name is Young.
Okay. So, and they basically said like, so that means you're related to, yeah. And so she might be, and she also might not be. It does seem sort of like, seems like something you could check out. I know a lot of Mormons lie about who they're related to, and they all think that they're related to pilgrims and shit like that, or pioneers.
Pioneers.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you how they did it, but I wouldn't suspect it was something magical, if that's what you're worried about.
Well, no, I don't think it's magical. I was just wondering if, like, I should be worried that they're keeping track of my family for some weird reason.
Maybe. I mean, like, you might be on a list of, like, people they want to keep harassing. I don't know. Go ahead, Lex.
I mean, they place a lot of emphasis on family history work because they, when they do temple work, they use actual names and baptize and put people through the temple by proxy. And if she actually is related to Brigham Young, I'm sure that work has been done. They have like a whole family history website where you can, pull up a family tree of a person and, see their family tree. And if they were related to an important historical figure within Mormonism, like Brigham Young, I mean, chances are probably, yeah.
Are you related to Mormons?
Yes.
What?
Are you related to any Mormons? Through your mother?
Not as far as I'm aware. There wasn't any Mormons, like, even local to us as far as I'm aware back then.
I'm going to guess then that they just went out on a limb and they knew your mother's last name and were like, well, that attaches you to the real creator of our church. Joseph Smith is the originator.
Right.
But Brigham Young have like 50 wives or something. Right. I mean, the chances that one of his children, his grandchildren, grandchildren could be related to you because he had so many children.
Yeah. And he really hated that he had to do that.
Was it the missionaries that reached out to you, or like who?
I would assume they're missionaries because I don't think there's any Mormon churches local to the area my mother lived in.
Did they have name tags on?
I don't know.
Oh, were you not actually present for this?
I was probably at school when this happened. I was just recently told this story.
Unfortunately,
how concerned.
There's even less I can tell you about what happened in a secondhand account of. Right? Yeah. It's everything goes out the window here. But if you ever find out, call back and tell me what happened. If they ever come and approach you, you can request they take you off any sort of list they're keeping, and technically they're supposed to, but whether they do or not is sort of different.
If it helps answer your question, I've never heard of Mormon missionaries or Mormons in general approaching a person to try to convert them and starting off by saying, I think you're related to ABC church leader. I've never heard of that happening before.
It's not out of the realm though of a lot of things I have heard of happening though. Like literally anything to break the ice. It's like it's like fucking. They're very similar in approach to like those pickup artist boards too. You just got to find something to say. You got to get in there somehow.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But you're probably not on a list where they're like, sitting outside your house with cameras, if that's something you might be worried about. I wouldn't say that level of things going on. But
I wasn't worried about it being that level.
Yeah. But they might have, if depending on how your mother reacted, she might have given them some reason to go like, let's check in with her again and see if we can't get this baptism deal closed.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the most nefarious, the worst it could possibly be. But I don't know. Yeah. All right. Good luck, Golden Calf.
Yep.
It's an interesting nickname. Let's talk to Mitchell in Utah. Mitchell, you are on the line.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you, Jimmy.
What up? What up?
Nice to meet. Nice to talk to you and Lex.
Yeah. Sounds good. I mean, yes, it is. You're right. It's your honor. No, I'm just kidding. It's nice to talk to you, Mitchell. What did you want to ask about? What did you want to talk about?
Yeah. When I first started deconverting, I remember having a thought of like, kind of like you were talking with Rich earlier about like, you know, the restriction of sex of young Mormon boys and stuff like that. So going through puberty and like being active, I remember having a thought that like, oh, I'm not going to end up in the celestial kingdom. I'm going to end up in the terrestrial kingdom. And for the audience that doesn't know, it's like heaven being split up into tiers. But I remember having that thought of like, oh, I'm actually not good enough to like make it to the top, but like I'm a good person. I'm not you know, a murderer or anything. So I'm not clearly not going to the telestial kingdom. So like kind of settled in like being in the middle. And then actually like later on actually feeling that like maybe I will end up in the telestial kingdom, the worst of the three, and having that kind of like
the worst mansion
dread.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The worst mansion. So when the two of you were my question, I guess, did the two of you, when you were believers, did you ever think that you wouldn't be in the celestial, the top, like that you were off that path, but also believing?
I think I always assumed I would eventually get my shit together, and that even if it didn't happen during this life, at some point during the millennium, I would, which is this 1,000-year period, when you're becoming perfect, like I'd really be able to kick my need to masturbate and have sex, and I'd become a perfect person with probably many wives to help me not masturbate and have sex. And I would attain that spiritual perfection and move on to the celestial kingdom. And if not, you know, whatever, it's fine. I still get mansions in heaven, right? Is what it is. Of course, like there's also nobody in the church actively really knows what all the rules are. Because if you like say like who goes here, you can find some general authority contradicting them. And Joseph Smith would have treated anybody who left the church as a person who is denying the Holy Ghost, and therefore I'm destined for outer darkness, eternal isolation. That would have been his version of things, and that has now been.
I was actually going to ask you that too.
Right. That's like now been
a pseudo like Pascal's wager.
That's sort of been lightened up to now. It's like to deny the Holy Ghost now means to basically, by some, you'd have to basically meet the Holy Ghost, because the Holy Ghost is a person and you have to meet him and basically be like, fuck you, buddy, and walk your back. You basically have to choose outer darkness, is what some of these people position now too. And so I agree with them that Joseph Smith was a liar. We're just, you know, they won't say it that way. So it all sort of depends. What about you? Did you worry about not being able to be with your family forever in the celestial kingdom, except for that they're allowed to? Do you remember being taught that your celestial kingdom family members would be able to visit you in the telestial kingdom? Like,
yeah, you could go down, but not up.
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
like, you know, like, oh, that's a consolation prize that like families, you know, we don't break up families, like, you know, but like, you know, only certain people have that ability to like really keep that contact.
Yeah, and you don't have a
whatever.
cell phone. They visit you when they want to. You're fucked. Lex, did you were you ever motivated by your anxieties over which kingdom you might end up in?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I feel like at the time as a Mormon, I always kind of like you assumed that like eventually I'm going to be a good person. Like I'm working on it so hard. I'm trying so hard. I'm going to get there. And I was really, really scared of, especially my oldest brother. He was 10 years older than I was, and he was not active. And I always, you know, I even heard specifically from a Sunday school teacher once because I asked about it. I was like, yeah, my older brother doesn't go to church anymore. And the Sunday school teacher was like, yeah, then he won't be there, but you'll be able to visit him in the lower kingdoms. And I remember being so offended and sad that he said that directly to me because I was like 12. I was
That's
like,
awful. My mother started
isn't it? I
threatening
was
me
like,
at
and-
like 7. She'd be like, you're going to be 8, the age of accountability. And these times that you're not doing what I tell you won't just be you being bad. It'll be you sinning. Like that sort of shit. Yeah.
so mean. And they would say things like, oh, he won't be at the table, like at the table with us in the kingdom of heaven and stuff. And it was sad. It made me feel really sad.
What we're getting at our Mormonism is Mormons are kind of dicks. Anyway, anything else,
Absolutely.
Mitchell? Any other questions before we let you go here?
No. Keep up the good work. Just pretty quick. Found both of you within the last few months, and
Hell yeah.
keep up the good work with both of the advocacy you do.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Before we take our last call here, a reminder that at the end of the show, we take super chats. Any chat of $5 or more will be read out loud. We'll respond to. Super chatting is one of the best ways you can support individual episodes, basically, and say like, hey, this show, this kind of show, this type of guest. On HOSTility, it's nice because HOSTility being not the shows that do the most in viewership are the shows that are the same show every week. So like the Sunday show where it's Matt and I, that's our most popular show on the line. Anything that then starts to have variety, these things go down. So if you like that we have this show, you like that there are people coming on, that we're introducing you to new people to go follow, see their work, see all the great stuff they do for largely our cathartic enjoyment, but also in helping other people deconstruct. A great way to tell us to keep doing shows like this would be to send those super chats. Like I said, any of $5 or more will be read. If you're watching this and the show's over and you didn't watch it live, you can also leave a super thanks in the comments, but we can't read those live because how would that work? That's time travel. Anyway, all that stuff. That's all the ways to do the things and the stuff and the things. We're going to talk to Dave in Maryland. Dave, you are on the line.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What up? What did you want to talk about?
I picked Squirtle because that sounds hot.
Oh my God. Okay.
Anyway.
You're fired. Go ahead.
So I grew up Jewish, and I feel like I wasted 6 years in Israel. I'm atheist now, but I don't know much about Mormonism, and just hearing you guys talk about it just seems like really weird. Mm-hmm. Is there such a thing as like Mormon mysticism? Or something that would be equivalent to like Jewish Kabbalah?
Yeah, man. So the thing with Jewish Kabbalah is it's sort of a separate tradition, right? Like obviously everybody is Jewish, but you either are doing the Kabbalah or you're not. Am I wrong? Kind of.
I have no idea what you mean by that.
Well, okay. Give us a good definition of mysticism to run with then, so we can kind of clear it up.
Yeah, I guess religious magic.
Right. So
like using angels or God's name or demons to do like magic, I guess.
By
maybe certain rituals.
By your definition, yes, there's tons of it. Mormons would try to convince you there's none of it. That magic and mysticism is distinctly different than priesthood and miracles. But they believe in, casting out demons. The temple rituals all have little magical side effects. They're putting hands on the head, commanding people to receive the Holy Ghost. There's a huge mystical origin to it all. Joseph Smith was using seer stones, putting his head in a hat to translate books, and there was magic words in front of his face popping up. There are lots and lots of mystical, borrowed from other mystical tradition things. They believe that black magic exists and that you can counter black magic with priesthood. But they think that if you meet a person and you get a really bad feeling about that person, that you're experiencing a demon in that person. And so if you're a man with a priesthood, you should put your hand up to the square and cast out that demon in the name of Jesus Christ. You get baptized for the dead. You do proxy baptisms, and you do that in this giant altar baptismal font that is on the back of a bunch of brass oxen or gold oxen. It's sort of a weird fucking thing, because you're like, this is getting pretty golden calfy up in here. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of what you could call mysticism, but they would want you to feel like it wasn't at all, that it's not a bunch of magic ritual nonsense. They bless their donuts to be nourishing and strengthening for their bodies. I'm not even fucking kidding. You go to an event with Mormons, and three out of every 5 events is going to have donuts, that there are refreshments. And at every one of them, they're going to go, all right, let's all bow our head and bless the refreshment. Please bless this food that it'll nourish and strengthen our bodies in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Which clearly has to be a magical spell, because how are you going to get nourishment and strengthenings from a donut? That one's a little bit more tongue in cheek. Any ideas in your head, Lex?
I was just thinking, I mean, I don't know if you've heard much about Mormonism and casting out demons, but that was something I actually heard quite a bit from missionaries in the church and from seminary teachers. And it's something that they don't talk about a lot, like, within like church lessons or during like general conference or anything like that. But I had a seminary teacher that told us, like, spent an entire seminary lesson telling us about how somebody he knew through somebody who knew through somebody who knew cast a demon out of her friend. And they were both like 14 years old. And she cast the demon out using this holy priesthood, which her father held.
In the name of my father's priesthood.
Pretty much. She said, in the name of, and with the priesthood that my father holds, I command you to get out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
which the church would not have been cool with as a story. The church would have been like,
but he told it as though it was.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody in chat wants me to remind you that Cain is Bigfoot, but that's not, I don't know if that's as much mysticism as it is, what's that other word for cryptids and shit? Cryptidism. That's not a word. I don't know, Dave, are we sort of answering your question, or do you feel like we're taking it a different direction than you intended?
No, yeah, I got the gist of it.
Cool.
Thanks. Yeah, go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Thank you, Dave. Love you, buddy. That's how people compliment me on here, because they know that I don't enjoy being complimented. It's just hard. It's hard to. So if you want to send a super chat of $5 or more with a "Go fuck yourself, Jimmy," you are welcome to. We're going to move to super chats right now. We don't have very many to read. Reminder that if we can't get enough super chats just to even cover our like call-in system and our costs, we actually have to sell this show to the Mormon Church. So get those super chats in so that the church doesn't end up owning this show. But yeah. But let me take care of a little bit of production stuff over here. Drop that. But yeah, I think it's called bullshit, Jimmy, about Bigfoot. So the Bigfoot thing isn't necessarily that the church says. It's sort of what people have inferred, basically, that because in a book, one of the past prophets of the church, and the book is called The Miracle of Forgiveness, describes an experience with a creature that it looks exactly like a Bigfoot, and that creature revealed to that prophet that he was Cain, and then basically begs the prophet to kill him, as I recall. And the prophet's like, no, you continue to suffer, you asshole, for that one thing you did thousands of years ago. You should be punished eternally for this thing that, by the way, our church kills people all the time. And we're like, yeah, well, what a bummer that was. Or has killed many people. I guess we should, I don't know that they're actively killing people, not directly, obviously through stupid things, people end up dying, but that's the nature of stupidity. It always kills somebody. Anyway, he was like, I cast thee out, Cain. Anyway, so Cain is Bigfoot. That's basically where that all comes from. Super chats. You ready for super chats?
Let's do it.
Bada boom. $10 from Sarah Dye. Looking back on it now makes me angry. The wives of the bishopric would teach the Singles Ward Relief Society how to be a good wife of a priesthood holder. Ugh. Yes, your entire identity as a Mormon woman first surrounds being a good daughter to your father, then being a good wife to your husband, and then being a good mother to your children, and especially your sons, because they're not as worried about the women with sort of continuing the tradition, except for that they are meant to be the primary indoctrinators of the children. So yeah, it's all basically around how will you best serve men, and don't you worry, when you die, we've got a plan for you to continue to serve men after that too. Did I get all that right, Lex?
So sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. 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 It is interesting too how it's
curious.
Often. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm curious, like, it made me think about all of the activities that we had when we were doing, young men and young women. How many activities we as young women had that centered around our future husbands, like write a letter to your future husband, or like we even had an activity that was like, let's make a wedding dress out of toilet paper, which I'm not sure what we were supposed to get out of that. We did it, but I wonder how many of the young men's activities were centered around how to be a good husband and how, to be a good partner. I doubt. Yeah.
Almost none. Again, the young men's activity was all Boy Scouts. So it was all like, here, try and work toward getting a merit badge. The merit badge I can remember working the most on, I never even got. But the one I remember we worked the most on was the cycling merit badge. And I ended up not finishing it. But
you'd be a good missionary.
Yeah, so I'd be a good. That's true. That's clearly part of it. I didn't even put that connection together until just now. That's a good point. And then going to scout camps and stuff like that. You were never taught how to speak to children, how to be around children at all. Like literally not at all, which men could really use. None of it. There's zero preparation to be any kind of like good husband, good whatever. It's all like, and then don't forget when you come back from your mission, work for, one of the ward's local landscaping companies. Somebody in the ward will have a landscaping company that you can go make some money until you figure out getting to BYU. And then through church, you'll figure out your career placement and all of that. It's all going to be great. It's all going to be great. We'll control every fucking aspect of your life and it's going to be great. $4.99 from Anabolic Boy. What do y'all think about Alma 32 faith onto a seed planted in your heart and you do not cast out by your unbelief thoughts? Thanks. I don't think much of it. I don't know what the question really is.
Wishing I knew my scripture mastery better at this point.
Yeah. Alma 32. Is this the
scripture mastery one?
It probably is. I mean, because it's the whole faith is like a little seed. Is it verse 27 maybe? No, it's not that one. Is this just the faith, the planting the faith seeds? What are we talking about here? I'll find it. Hang on. I'll find the exact verse.
Yeah, pull it up.
Alma compares the word unto a seed. Let's see. No, I was right. It is verse 20. Well, it's 27, but then into 28. But behold, if ye will awake and arouse your faculties, even to an experiment upon my words and exercise a particle of faith, even if ye can no more than desire to believe, let this desire work in you, even until ye believe in a manner that ye can give place for a portion of my words. Now we will compare the word unto a seed. Now if ye give place that a seed may be planted in your heart, if it be a true seed or a good seed, if ye do not cast it out by your unbelief, and that you will resist the spirit. So basically it's an exercise in confirmation bias. It's teaching people that confirmation bias for the church is a good thing. If you'll just behave as though it is true, it'll become more and more obviously true as time goes on. And if every time you realize it's not true, you don't throw it away, you'll get over it not being true. I mean, it's just a practice in confirmation bias. Faith is like a little seed. If planted, it will grow. Whoa. Faith is, and then the word is a swelling. Faith is a swelling within my heart. When
I never heard
do
it that way.
Right, I know. What did you hear it as?
Are you sure?
What did you hear it as?
It was like a feeling or something. You need to Google that one. Tell me what that one is supposed to be.
No, it's, I think I'm right. Faith is knowing the sun will rise. You thought it was faith is a feeling. They wouldn't have admitted that.
It might not be feeling, but I don't remember it being swelling. Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure, but I'm pulling it up right now. Nope, yeah. Faith is a swelling within my heart.
Swelling?
A swelling. Not just swelling, a swelling. Faith is knowing the sun will rise, lighting each new day. Faith is knowing the Lord will hear my prayers each time I pray. Faith is like a little seed. If planted, it will grow. Faith is a swelling within my heart. When I do right, I know. And then in the second verse, it's faith is strengthened. I feel it grow whenever I obey. Yeah, these songs are way more nefarious than people realize. Have you ever really read We Thank Thee, O God, for a Prophet? Now knowing what you know?
I don't think so. I don't think since I've left.
Well, I'm going to read a certain part of it to you, and you're going to go like, fucking shit, did we used to sing that like it was great? It literally talks about killing unbelievers.
What?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't remember that.
So we thank thee, O God, for a prophet to guide us in these latter days. We thank thee for sending the gospel to lighten our minds with the praise. We thank thee for every blessing. Okay, that one's all fine, right? That verse is fine. Check out, is it verse 2 or 3? Let me see. I think it's verse 2. It is verse 2. Yes, okay. When dark clouds of trouble hang o'er us and threaten our peace to destroy. I'm just going to traumatize everybody who's an ex-Mormon right now. There is hope smiling brightly before us, and we know that deliverance is nigh. Do you still know the verses? Do you know the next ones that come? We doubt not the Lord nor his goodness. We've proved him in days that are past. Here's the final line of the second verse. The wicked who fight against Zion will surely be smitten at last. We're finally going to kill the unbelievers. It doesn't say their beliefs. The wicked who fight against Zion will surely be smitten at last. And Zion is the church. It's basically Salt Lake City. Zion is wherever the gospel is.
That way.
What has smitten ever meant otherwise in religious tradition? The Lord smites. That's what the Lord does. He smites. There's a lot of shit like that.
That's so awful.
The fucking whenever I obey.
That's us.
What's that?
Sad. The wicked who fight against Zion, that would literally be us.
Exactly. So they are singing about how stoked they are that they're finally going to smite my ass one day. Why does this red thing happen on my face? I don't understand it. I get there's a flushing happening here. It looks like I got punched in the face. I've had this for years, and it happens on this side too, but now in a more concentrated place. I assume it's because I have the heat on, but I only have the heat set to 60 because it's like 12 degrees out right now. It's fucking weird. Anyway, I'm in Texas. It shouldn't be 12 degrees out. I know. I just don't like it. Doesn't it look like I got punched in the face to you?
No, I would not say that.
On my little monitor that I look at, this looks like it looks like a bruise to me.
Well,
anyway.
My phone screen's really tiny, so who knows?
Here, I'll bring it back to like this. It's not as bad when it's bigger, but maybe now to you see it. You don't think it looks like I got punched in the face a little bit?
Maybe a tiny bit.
Yeah,
maybe a tiny bit.
Did you punch me in the face? Sarah Dye for $5 says, my love and I went through the repentance process twice for being naughty with each other. 2 different bishops. First one wanted details. Second one didn't. Yeah, your first one was probably a fucking pervert. Fucking weirdos getting their rocks off, getting ideas.
You kind of, it depends on the bishop you get. Like, I feel like some of them were just as uncomfortable as you were in situations like that and just wanted it to be over. And then some of them were creepy.
Yeah. What besides the bare minimum, basically asking like, did you have sex? Did you do that? Like, just give me an idea and then we'll go, whoa. Asking for details. What details would change anything? If it's literally like the sexual thing that you were doing, you got to stop doing. Why does the bishop need to know the details? Did you orgasm? Why does he need to know if you came?
How many times?
That's one of the common ones.
Where exactly did he touch you?
Right. Where did he ejaculate? Fucking weirdos.
How many times?
What the fuck? Somebody's in the call trying to tell us to move on and take calls. The call portion is over, fuckface. This is what happens when you show up late to an episode and try to direct it from the audience. And that's a loving fuckface. Maybe you're normally a nice person, but
they're running on Mormon Standard Time, Jimmy.
Fucking Christ. Get the fuck out of here, Shaner. I'm calling you out by name. Go fuck yourself. Stan Gieskusia says, hiya, Jimmy. Have you ever been to Adamon-Ondai Amen, which I understand is the Mormon equivalent of the Garden of Eden? So it's not that it's the Mormon equivalent of the Garden of Eden. It's where the Mormons claim the Garden of Eden was in Missouri. But no, I've never been.
Yeah.
I would never step foot into Missouri.
And where Christ will return at the second coming.
Missouri's a giant shithole. What the fuck's there to see there?
It is.
And that's where, don't forget, he has to stop first off in Jerusalem. He has to stop by and lay a toe down on the mount, but then he comes to Adamondai.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he has to fulfill the Bible thing, but it's not as important before he heads to America.
My brother had basic training for the Army in Missouri, so I've been there one time, and I remember being there thinking, this is the place? This is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Dante Verona says, among LDS, what's the most common response or explanation about Planet Kolob? Do they just dismiss it? Boy, I don't remember ever discussing Kolob with other Mormons. Almost, I mean, just them saying like, yeah, in the universe somewhere far away, God is basically chilling on a planet that he can see us from. But he can see everything because he's also everywhere. But it's like maybe it's a diamond planet. I don't know, something weird like that. And I remember singing, if you could hie to Kolob in the twinkling of an eye, which is a stolen song, by the way. The melody is stolen. I don't remember what from, but it is. Anyway, yeah, I don't remember ever talking about it. And I've never tried to address it with. I think they'd just be like, this isn't important. You know, I literally believe in fucking Battlestar Galactica. Like this is that level of insane. And you're worried about whether God is on a physical planet. At least physical planets exist. That's a somewhat naturalistic thing for God to do. Strangely materialistic in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing a lot about it other than, like you were saying, the song, which was like 90% of people's favorite song, favorite hymn. But I mean, yeah, we didn't talk about it all that much. I've heard about it a lot more since leaving the church than I ever did when I was a member.
I mean, I knew it existed plenty in the church. I wouldn't say I haven't had any revelations about it since leaving. I don't think it's just been like, it's just sort of a thing you establish. And it's usually a part of the like, and by the way, you can become your own God and you'll have your own universes and you'll maintain them from your planet and blah, blah, blah. But like, it's because what's weird is when everybody is like, Mormons believe you get your own planet. I'm like, that's nothing. Mormons believe you get your own universes. It's just that you manage them, that your office is on a planet. Like, why are y'all focusing on the planet aspect? When I become a god, I go and I create my own universe. It ain't this universe. What are you talking about? Anyway.
Yeah.
And then they think the multiverse theory pans that out. It's like, well, you clearly don't understand fundamentally what they're proposing. Anyway, $5 from Eddie Dean. I always get Mormon men knocking at my door. Why is it never women? I might entertain that conversation. Probably because you're known to be a man and that only men live there. It's like, unless there are women who live with you, but that could literally be the case. But there are far fewer, but there are women missionaries. And they are usually reserved to like, not even always proselytizing. They're often given other shit to do, like cleaning buildings and maid work, basically. But then also when it's specifically to meet with somebody who can't have a male present, they'll do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's typically more men that are missionaries than women as well. So if it was missionaries, it's more likely to be men. They want women to get married rather than be a missionary for the most part.
In Cheyenne, I can remember there was like probably like 20 or so missionaries assigned to Cheyenne, but I remember only one pair of there ever being quote unquote sister missionaries in the whole stake, let alone city. I mean, the stake pretty much was just Cheyenne, but and a couple of little surrounding areas. So there's way fewer female missionaries. Sean Bates says, were either of you discouraged, forbidden from playing any magic demon related games? My mom had a traumatic Ouija board experience in college, so she was always strict. How about you?
No, not really. I feel like the only game that my mom didn't like us playing was GoldenEye on Nintendo 64. But we played it anyway.
So I was the fifth boy and sixth, why can't I say that word today, child of what is now, I have 12 siblings, but by then they were already pretty tired of actually watching their kids and shit. So like, my mother found my Yu-Gi-Oh cards and thought some of them looked like demons and said that you can't have these anymore. But then like I talked her down to, what if I just don't use the ones you thought looked like demons? And she was like, then that's okay. Because she didn't want me to stop going to other people's houses so that they could raise and feed me instead of her. She liked that I would leave a lot to go play Yu-Gi-Oh with kids. And she didn't want me to be around more. So yeah, not really. Like we were allowed Harry Potter. We were allowed fucking, anything that wasn't like obviously and distinctly. But remember, you're talking about people who, were you even allowed to watch PG-13 movies, Lex?
It depended on the movie.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to watch PG-13 movies.
Like we weren't allowed to watch The Simpsons.
See, we could watch The Simpsons with my dad, but we weren't allowed to watch them by ourselves.
I would say like, I knew a lot of Mormons that were not allowed to read Harry Potter or watch Harry Potter. Yeah. And like, I don't know, there were certain things that were a little bit taboo, but like Ouija boards, if you're talking about like having a traumatic experience with a Ouija board, like that was super off limits. I heard so many horror stories about Ouija boards when I grew up as a Mormon.
Yeah, for us, it wasn't like something that they strongly said. They were literally like, don't do Ouija boards because you might invite in a Satan or something. You know, you don't want to do that. And so it was literally
Satan.
something. Yeah, a demon or a Satan or something. Yeah, it wasn't like hard pressed. Like they felt like they had to sit us down, but they'd be like, you probably shouldn't watch TV shows of John Edwards talking to the dead because, he probably is doing something a little demonic there when we know that that's all a scam now. That's the other thing is like to be Mormon isn't just to think that your beliefs are true, but to think that other people are out there doing like magic shit. And you're just like, what a fucking life. What a world.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I remember my most specific memories of that stuff is my grandparents telling a story about how like they went to a party where supposedly the people were playing with a Ouija board and it was working. But my grandparents were like so spiritual that when they walked through the front door, it stopped working.
So stupid. 20, we call Canadian dollars alleged dollars here. 20 alleged dollars from Katy Montgomerie. One time in seminary, we had a serious, lengthy discussion about whether or not God could poop. This is how I know that your seminary teacher was a man. The conclusion ended up being yes, he can, but only if he wants to. That would have been too.
Who wants to poop?
If yours, I would be shocked if your seminary. I feel like a woman seminary teacher would have walked in and been like, "Is this the best way we can edify Christ?" Like that would have been. It would have been like. Whereas I feel like only a man teacher would have indulged this just the way it is. And yet, can God eat a burrito so large that even he can't poop it? If God can do anything. Kathleen, I'm waiting to see whether or not.
Oh my God.
Please let us know, Kathleen, in the chat whether or not your seminary teacher was a man or just absent. That's also a possibility.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like something that maybe there just wasn't a seminary teacher for. Only a couple more of these left. Get your super chats in now. $5 or more if you want it read on air. $5 from Kenzie Page. I was born, raised, and baptized in Salt Lake in the 90s. Now I'm an atheist trans guy who enjoys the wide variety of your content. Thanks so much. Well, thank you, Kenzie. That's really, really sweet of you to say. And I hope that you got out of Salt Lake because that's probably not a great time. It's probably not a great time and probably not a great place to be trans. Yeah, I hope so. Let's see. Yes, can confirm he was a man, as were 90% of the kids in there. Yeah, and also most seminary teachers are male because they generally will not allow a woman to be a seminary teacher unless she's already had children and those children are of the age that they're in some way not in the house. Like the closest to an exception to that was I had a female seminary teacher whose daughters were in our seminary class. So like whose youngest daughters were in our seminary class. But yeah, they don't, they want women to be at home raising the kids. So they don't allow, with kids that are of child rearing age mothers to be seminary teachers. But yep, it was a man. It was a man seminary teacher. We're both very surprised.
Not surprised.
Were all of your seminary teachers men? I actually had 2 women.
The only time that they were women is if we had a substitute.
Interesting. Yeah. I had so freshman year, the first semester I had a man, but second semester I had a woman because we moved. And then sophomore year, we had the stake president's wife. So wait, was that sophomore? Was that sophomore year sophomore year was a man. Junior was a man. And junior year was the stake president's wife. And then senior year was the same man from sophomore year. I'm pretty sure that's all correct, but I don't know. So senior year is about when I would have started experimenting with drugs and shit. So who knows? Who knows? Oh, sorry, I almost missed. Sbeev Golden Calf says, I just confirmed with my mother that they were missionaries and they knew other family members' names as well. Yeah, so they were doing some fucking creepy ass research. They were looking for any way in. Yep.
They're probably on, what's that called? It's not Family Tree, but it's like Family Search. FamilySearch.com.
Making them connections up, linking them all up.
Yeah.
Fucking creeps. Israel Shavlov says, and by the way, there's only this and one more super chat. If you guys want the show to go on any longer, we got to get them in. Israel Shavlov says, as an ex-Mormon convert, I'd like to thank you, Jimmy. Your suggestion to take a break saved me from staying in. You also saved me 10% of my income. So thank you very much, Israel. I'd call yourself a deconvert rather than an ex-Mormon convert, but a deconverted Mormon than an ex-Mormon convert. What Israel is referring to is, I've said a bunch of times in different places, if the church is true, it'll stay true even if you take a break from sacrament meeting. So just take a month off from sacrament meeting. How's it going to become less true? But you'll notice when you take a break from going to church, suddenly you start to allow yourself to consider things more. When you're not having your indoctrination and your guilt refreshed once a week, you start to sit and go, and the best thing you can do, the church is true if it's true no matter what. Nothing will stop a church from being true if it's true. So taking a break and letting yourself get a little bit of perspective over something which is true should actually make it more obviously true, should increase the amount of its trueness. And yet, the other thing happens. But then, the other thing. By the way, I do want to warn everybody before I read the last super chat here. There is the possibility, based on history, that so tomorrow night is the hang up with Heathen Queen, and then we'll have on Thursday the big celebration of the 3-year anniversary. That's when I shave my head. Austin, Texas, this part of the country right now is going through ice storms, and they do not have the infrastructure to stand up to it. So there is a chance of power and internet outages over the next couple of days. If a show doesn't go on, that's going to be why. It means that we either lost power or we lost internet. I assure you, even if that happens, the head shaving will still happen. You'll still get to see me as bald Dillahunty. I'm not looking for an out. Y'all did it. You passed the 250 mark on Patreon. I got to figure out what the goal for next month is going to be and what the reward will be. We'll probably aim for like 400 patrons and see if we can come up with something else. But yeah, we got to do that. Let's see. Katy Montgomerie says, smite me again, Sky Daddy. Yeah, Sky Daddy, smite me. I have so often been with theists, like having a one-on-one conversation, and they'll start talking about their like sort of mystical paranoias. And I'll be like, fine, God, I say you don't exist. Fuck you, God. Strike me with lightning now if I'm wrong. And they'll brace. They'll brace them. They'll be like, whoa, stop. I'm right next to you. Don't be bringing in like they actually think it might have. They start to get scared, and you're like, I can't remember. I'm sure that's how I used to be too. But Jesus Christ, superstar. Eddie Dean for $5 says, off topic, but would you consider having Emma Thorne on the line? We've actually already talked about it, and I think the last we spoke, we said that would eventually happen, and I've just been bad at following up. But Emma is in the UK, obviously, so it's a little bit harder to coordinate with European hosts. But I presume, I'd go so far as to say I presume Emma will eventually be on the line somewhere. Yeah. Time zones suck. Well, it looks like that's the last one. Do you want to remind people where they can find you, what your favorite Pokemon is? You still haven't chosen. What your favorite color is? Why you're such an amazing person? Why I love you so much? What do you want to tell the people before we go?
Well, just go find me on YouTube, ExmoLex, and TikTok at ExmoLex. And I like Pokemon. I just can't tell you which one is my favorite. I'm so sorry.
Link is in the description to ExmoLex's Linktree. Check that out and go support her everywhere. And be on the lookout for like when people are mean to her in the comments, hit them back. Let's out troll the trolls. We can do it. You don't fuck with the people I love. Bye everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll both wave, and then I have to get rid of the name banners first, and then I run the outro.